All right. Hey, Chair. Good to see you.
I'm trying to speak to you, but you look busy.
You would say,
Oh, I've been talking since I got here this morning. I didn't know that.
what's in here?
Community rep.
Oh, okay. Keep this away. Don't even talk to me.
Oh, probably good. Chris has homemade cookies.
Are you kidding?
What do you care about cookies? Look at me. Do I look like the kind of guy?
You said homemade.
Do I look like?
Do I look like the kind of guy that cares about
Wait,
food?
wait, wait, not the kind that you get out of the packet and put in the oven.
No.
Scratch.
At the end of the regular.
Okay, that's big information.
I will be, going home a little late tonight.
9:05.
After the work session, I'll help you out.
No. That was a private conversation.
Oh.
I know, we all heard it.
That was meant for the mayor.
You've been dismissed.
We haven't started recording yet.
That's all good. All right. We'll start our work session and kind of hit some things. Just seems like we're having some fun so far. All right, so have you had a chance to look at the minutes of the meeting for May 11th and May 25th? And they're both regular session, work session. Any issues with those on the approval of the minutes for the
The 11th still miss material statement in some points. The only thing added was added the amended motion in the regular meeting. So both of them I suggest for the accuracy of public record, we should have to adjust that so it reflects what actually happened.
But didn't you have a chance to fix that?
I submitted I forwarded out the misstatement twice, and just I think just one of that was amended motion. The motion to amend the motion was added. The rest is still missing.
Right? Thoughts?
So, I think what happened is that when the work session, changes were emailed, they omitted the city clerk. So it was a misstep that, so she made the amendments to the regular session and sent those out, but she did not, the work session were not amended because she was not included on the email. And that wasn't brought to our attention until this afternoon at about 3 o'clock, so those changes have not been made. But for the record, I would like to say it's not a material misstatement, it was just one paraphrasing version versus another.
This is just, so item 1 and 2.
So you would just defer them again if you
11.
want to make the changes
Yeah,
later?
and then we'll just approve the May 25th regular work session.
Do we need to defer it? Can't you just read it into the, meeting without having to defer?
You can. Do we have the amended section in terms of what was there?
Well, and again, because, and just like if we're getting them the day of the meeting, I would prefer not to try and make the amendments during the meeting. So either, if you're asking for my recommendation, either you recommend them as they are, or you defer them and give us a minute to fix them.
So that people can actually read what somebody amended along those lines.
We don't have an amended version right now because we just got it this afternoon.
I'll give you a couple thoughts and then you can decide for yourself. First off, all our minutes are not verbatim minutes. Nobody's writing what John wrote down specifically. We're just really required is how the votes went, right? And the rest of it's paraphrasing. So if we're trying to be exact, that's never going to happen. If they're reasonably close, that's what anybody's really worried about. And that's what the motions are for. Then I just recommend you pass it. If you want to give them a chance to be able to amend it one more time, so be it. I don't think it matters one way or the other. So it's just, what's the recommendation of the council?
I agree with the mayor that our meeting minutes did not tease them to where we don't write exactly word, but whichever way we record the meeting minutes that we choose, it should not be material misstatement. because some of the questions for the city attorney and her answer, it doesn't reflect what actually happened in the meeting. So that's material misstatement.
I just,
What's the thought on the city council? Ms. Knight, go, no
I feel let's work through this one last time. If we're gonna defer it, let's go ahead and defer it, but moving forward, let's be clear, our responsibility as council members, when the meetings roll out, let's get the response and the changes to the city manager timely so that we're no longer deferring meeting minutes. If you feel it's a material misstatement, let's understand what it is that you're referring to. But moving forward, let's stop doing the deferment of the meeting minutes dance. Let's just move forward so that we can get to the business of the city and be progressive with our timing. So let's just be mindful of when the minutes roll out to us, let's review them as our responsibility, make the statements so that city clerk and the city manager have time to present it in the meeting that we're going to approve the minutes, and let's just move on.
Good with that, doing
I'm good with that, you know, especially, I think that it was presented today, the changes, and I think Councilwoman Knight made excellent points.
Mr. Clark?
I agree.
All right, so we'll defer May 11th, and then that gives us for the approval May 25th. Okay. Service PIN, James Week, 15 years. That's pretty cool. Public hearing on the budget. We have Chris Pike here with the section. Outside of having the public hearing, we're going to be having the public hearing. Anything you want to tell us about what's in it?
Yeah, I can either,
No tax increase, right?
no tax increase. I can either speak to that now or later at the public hearing, whatever your preference
Let's
is.
do the public hearing, because that way we can
Okay.
keep it. Then board appointments, we have a couple of appointments for the Downtown Development Authority, those longtime residents on the property, who had the pleasure of running against me for mayor. Sherry Chris, who's been there for a while. Both of them have agreed to serve, and unless anybody has any questions they want to ask now, it's not. Members, well, Bonnie's here, she may already.
Yes.
Sherry's here, she
I'm
may ask questions.
familiar with both.
Okay, you good? Go ahead. Well, Ms. Tran, you good?
I'm good.
All right. Cost recovery agreement, I believe that's going to be the final one. You want to wait on that one?
well, actually, I want to point out something. So in the agreement that you all had in your packet, we identified, as we needed to before it was approved, the collection agency, if you will, that we were going to use, and we typed in that it was the GMA collection agency. Well, that agency name is PIN, and so we would ask that PIN Credit is GMA's preferred collection agency. So we would ask that the motion include the execution of both the contract as well as the subcontract with PIN Collection.
Okay.
PIN Credit.
Anyone have any questions? 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 You have any questions, Ms. Tran?
I'm good.
All right, we'll have them explain that when it comes in. Defined benefit plan, I know we've had that on several discussions, but we don't have, there's nothing on the regular menu, right?
Yes. It's an approval to begin the transition under the new business item 2.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna need some glasses. Storm sewer agreement.
And we have in our company tonight Mark Whitley, who can talk to us a little bit about that if you so choose.
I will ask you all kinds of questions, Mark. Everybody got the tough questions? Well, let's go ahead and at least ask them while we're here. Come on, go ahead. And this is the MS4 stuff, right?
Yes.
It is.
And so, Mark, what they have is the document that Beth sent and the signature page.
Okay, where would you like me to stand at?
Well, sorry, we usually have a podium right there, but.
Right next to the door, that's good.
That's good? Okay.
Anywhere you like, someplace where they'll say,
I'm right here, that's fine.
yeah, that's good enough.
Okay.
It's obviously a stormwater requirement, it's got to be updated every so often, it's done through the water authority, and Morrow has a certain responsibilities as part of the group. Just fill us in on.
That's right.
For those who don't know.
I apologize, I guess, for the water authority, because typically, and I think you remember last year, they came in, I think they were at this meeting and spoke and answered questions, and unfortunately, they weren't able to have anybody here tonight, so I was talking to Sylvia and told her that I do some of this type of work, and so I thought I would come up and be able to, hopefully be able to assist you if you do have some questions. But, yeah, this is part of the annual report, which Clayton County Water Authority, as a stormwater utility, actually performs most of the duties, including the report, for not only the county, but for all the cities that are located in Clayton County.
Mandated by Georgia law.
That's right. And the report actually runs from the date of May 1st of 2019 through April 30th of this year. And the report has to be submitted in June to EPD, which is a mandated program actually from EPA. The reason they have to do it. The report involves all kinds of things from stormwater. I was prepared to run through those things, but I'm afraid I'd probably just bore you with it. But it has mostly to do with stormwater from the perspective that they inspect all your systems. Let me back up and kind of explain to you how that works with the program itself. The MPDS permit, which is the general stormwater permit that governs this program, is a 5-year program. And we are currently in year 3 of that program. What you're required to do, for instance, let's just say that you had 10,000, well, let me back up to Morrow. Let's say you had 300 stormwater systems in the city of Morrow. What you would have to do is, during that 5-year period, you're required to inspect 100% of those structures, which means year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. It's going to be broken down somewhere between 15 to 25%. But when you get through that 5 years, you would have done 100% of those inspections. So it involves inspecting your stormwater systems, maintaining your stormwater systems. Morrow has a section in there where you provide some street sweeping as part of the litter control for the city. So it has to do with litter, it has to do with new development, stormwater control of those development, which I think last year we talked about some of the green infrastructure, low impact development, which was kind of a new thing coming in. And that involves all your new developments. Stormwater detention, stormwater retention. Some of the green infrastructure that's coming out is can be as basic as rain gardens on a house, vegetated swales, bioretention ponds. And again, that's kind of a new thing, so we haven't seen a whole lot of that yet, but we are starting to get into those type of things.
And most of this is paid for with the stormwater utility. Every business here pays it, you pay it at your house through your water bill.
That's correct. Yeah.
Questions yet? And Mark does a lot of engineering work for the city, hopefully some SPLOST stuff.
I mean, this has been done.
Well,
I do have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the difference, as far as collection of, the rainwater? The street, those are not stormwater, drains, those, I guess. the
Catch
main-
basins.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they're taller.
There are systems now that you can actually install inside catch basins. We're starting to see them on some of the commercial sites that are real tight in areas, to where the water that goes into these systems are actually filtered before they're released into the systems, to the pipe systems. And then those filter systems have to be cleaned out every 3 to 6 months. So that may be what you're talking about, but you are starting to see more of those type of systems. They're very expensive at this stage of the game, but I'm sure as they use more and more, the prices become more competitive.
does it allow you to build less stormwater detention facilities? I mean,
It's really, you're dealing with stormwater, you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with stormwater detention, which is what we've been dealing with for 30 years, which is to control the rate of the flow. And that's, all of the ponds that you see around these detention ponds, that's what that's doing. A few years back, the issue of water quality came into place, where you're actually supposed to treat some of the pollutants, allow some of the pollutants to be either picked up and collected through some type of filter system, or more than likely a system to where it has a chance to filter into the ground system itself and let Mother Nature do that cleaning. So you're dealing with those two issues. Water quality's been kind of the small thing behind the scene, but now the water quality is actually catching up and actually seems to become more important than actually detention is. So those two together are pretty much what's dictating what's going on.
Well,
No question.
Ms. Tran? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Then we have an ordinance 2107, which is the emergency recovery.
And so just, this is the ordinance that works hand in hand with the recovery agreement. So the ordinance that ordains your ability to sign the contract.
And second reading. And then we have a first reading of the budget. And resolution 2105, adoption of hazard mitigation.
Would you like to hear from your fire chief on the subject?
I would.
Oh, there you go, fire chief's way.
So the hazard mitigation plan is something that Clayton County Emergency Management, along with all the cities in the county, develop, and has to be updated every 5 years. We are mandated to do it if we want to receive help from the federal government in case of a disaster. So it's a gotta do it kind of thing, but it's also very important because it helps us plan for floods, tornadoes, ice storms, all these different things. Everything is laid out in this 565-page document with each city within the county and who is responsible for what action. So it identifies them, it assesses them, and it has a plan to mitigate all these different natural and man-made disasters. So it's been approved by the state, by GEMA. Each city and the county has to pass a resolution that you have before you tonight. Those have to be submitted to FEMA for FEMA to approve it.
And do these include places like Sherwin-Williams for the different things that they have out there, man-made disasters?
No, it doesn't go into specifics for businesses. It's mainly natural disaster type thing. There are some segments in there about terrorism and that sort of thing, but not specific to a particular business.
Questions? Ms. Knight? Ms. Steve?
Man-made disasters.
Terrorism would be the big one.
Okay, that's it. Those fires and all that stuff.
I really can't think of anything else. Well, fire would be considered a natural disaster, wildfires and that sort of thing.
If it's natural, not started.
But a chemical spill,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Chemicals.
Yeah, hazardous materials, yes.
Okay.
that's not a natural disaster though, is it?
Right,
Right.
sorry.
Very good.
Okay.
And there's a copy available in the back, if anybody's so interested in reading it. We can put a link certainly on the website, and then, of course, the city clerk's office will always maintain a copy.
Ms. Tran?
I'm good for now, thank you.
Morrow Center, baby.
Warren, you with us?
Oh,
You're
yeah,
right.
sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm like, is this part of the joke?
Thanks for text conversation with the director of Morrow Management right now. I'm sorry, guys. But so I just want to start with saying that first. So just kind of the state of the industry. Morrow Management, she just told me that she's going to be closed, and that's for why, until August, maybe. So they're just not even looking out open. They have a lot of things to do. Stockbridge is very scary with the news outlets and things like that. So that's their position. Lake City Convention Center will not be opening until October because they have other repairs, and they said they're not ready to open just yet. Anita is taking certain clients only, so she's not fully back to 100%, but that's the state of where we are. And GICC, they resume catering events either this week or next week, so they're pretty much back open as well. So that's the state of the industry. As far as our profits and losses, you guys see there's a negative 14 grand there. that big chunk that you see under total equipment and repairs is the HVAC. And I'll get into that a little bit later. We're still kind of loving through that process there. Of course, if we did not have that, we saw a small profit of $688, I believe.
But I think it's important right
Sure.
now, because if we're gonna talk about what are they, receiver, what is a retractor, what's the word? That you want the council to consider, that you just sent me
Yes.
today?
The repeater boxes.
Thank you. And you all have a copy of it. So if you would talk to us about the necessity for the repeater.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm
So-
sure the mayor probably already knows.
Jump right into the HVAC. So, we're still having difficulties, keeping the building cold. There's some of the cracks, it has gotten better. It's colder longer, but during the event, for some reason, it just seems to just crap out or not work. The great day of the week, it was hot, and man, oh man. It was what?
7?
Yeah, but it was 70 around the building, but it felt like, 76,
Especially in a
75.
wedding dress.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I have clients brides in their suites that we sell, and mind you, these packages we're selling them for starting at $5,000. So the average is $6,000-7,000, and the bride came out sweating, right before she walked down the aisle for the first time. That's not a good look. So we have air movers from Public Works that we put in there so we needed it to work. So I spoke to Beth this afternoon, right before I came over here. She said that she sent Billy a couple things about what we need, including VAV cleanings, or checking the VAV boxes. They need attention, they need filter changes before when they were our rep or our company before Siemens took over, we were on quarterly cleanings. She said we rarely had calls about the Morrow Center because it was just so self-sustaining. She said we need to move back to that, which is always the goal. And she said that she's going to add that to our existing service agreement, so she'll resend that. I'm sure you guys will get that on your desks soon enough. Also, the repeater boxes, like she mentioned, those are there. So the point of that, so everyone knows, of course, as she explained it to me, is that the repeater boxes allow the building to cool faster, so that it can be a more direct and more quicker response to when a customer says, hey, can you turn it down, can you warm it up, whatever like that. Right now, if you make a change on the system, from the medicine system, it takes about the same time that Siemens did. You won't really see that change for about an hour and a half. By that time, the event could be over, people could be more pissed, less comfortable, so we definitely want to look into that, and I think that's around 2,276.
Yeah, and in fact, we would ask that the council possibly consider adding this to the agenda for approval tonight. If
You
not,
got it in your hands?
you have a copy too, in this folder. The Marquita, the mayor, get a folder.
That's the total cost.
For the repeaters. But I think it's fair to say, and Warren, correct me if I'm wrong, what we come to understand, the longer we have our conversation is, there's gonna be pieces that, to get everything fixed.
Yeah. And Beth said that she mentioned that as well, yeah.
But it's not, because I never wanna misrepresent, like we're giving you the last and final piece. There is an evolution that's going on with the HVAC at the Morrow Center, and we just wanna present it as it comes, because that's what we need to do.
Absolutely.
But we just got this today, I just got this today, that's why you're just getting it today. But, and of course, if you choose not to approve it today, then we would ask that we can have it on next meeting's agenda. But we recommend
You're gonna pass
approving
it.
today.
Give them at least the time, because otherwise you just lose the time for no reason. And any objection to putting it on the agenda?
Thanks, sir.
We'll just add it as.
New business item number 4.
And so,
What are
also,
we adding on the agenda?
Marquita emailed it to you. It's the Johnson Controls proposal for the repeaters in the amount of $2,217. She emailed it to you earlier so you could pull it up during the meeting.
And what does that do?
I'm gonna say that's a communication thing. That's usually what a repeater does.
It allows the rooms to be cooled or heated quicker than 1.5 hours.
But,
That's right,
I
right?
think it's a communication device with the system that
Yes.
basically allows it to talk to each other faster.
Much faster.
Yes.
No.
Correct. It's not like a reheated system or something.
Mhm.
provide and install repeaters to improve communication, so, you know, for the system.
So what fund are we using for this spending?
That's a really good question.
The Morrow Center,
Just operations.
yeah, Operation Enterprise Fund money.
Enterprise fund?
We also need, weather stripping on all the doors at the Morrow Center, because you can pretty much throw 3/4 out some of those slots. I mean, some of those slots are pretty big between the doors, above the doors, under the doors. I mean, so the pre-functions, they're just working so hard to try to stay cool, and that's where the cocktail hours are. That's the first thing that people feel when you walk in the building. You want to get cool, not feel like it's humid. So, you know, we just want to maybe keep that brand standard up so that, you know, and I'll put that in the request with Public Works.
Yeah, it's exactly, that shouldn't require a contract.
Right, exactly. So just talking about just getting the HVAC to have its best shot there. You know, we do need the weather stripping, and that would be on all the doors on both pre-functions at the Morrow Center. And I appreciate you guys doing that, you know, with the agenda, because it's all about the trust that we build at the Morrow Center with our clients. That's all that we sell. I tell all the staff there, we don't sell space, we sell memories. And so people want to have a great memory at the Morrow Center, and that word of mouth will catch like wildfire, positive or negative. So we definitely want to make sure, you know, we're taking care of them, and that's our main goal. Projections for June, we're looking at bringing in $23,148.36 as it stands now. For July, we're looking at $27,282.83, and that's what we've taken in so far for the June and July, just so you guys can kind of see what's going on. As far as the type of events, I know that you guys ask that sometimes. We have conferences, baby showers, weddings. I mean, when I tell you that, okay, so just today, I rejected 3 events because we just don't have the space. We don't have the dates. So that's a good problem to have. I also signed 3 contracts today as well. So, you know, it's kind of ebbing out. So, but yeah, I'm referring, and other venues are not open. So it's a crazy mess right now in the hospitality world. All of a sudden it just exploded. I was on the conference call, I mentioned before, I'm on the International Association of Venue Managers, and so when the question was asked about how is everyone doing, is anyone, you know, seeing good returns, everyone's hand went up, and except for Missouri, because they're still having problems with their COVID. There was a company in Cincinnati, he's the biggest event center there. He said, this is my biggest year ever. So everyone's seeing that upward trajectory, because people, when you've been cooped up so long, yeah, you gotta get out. People are paying anything and everything under the sun. They don't care what the cost is.
Well, while your stress load is low, let me see if I can improve that. We working behind the scenes on potentially a restaurant for that.
Yes.
Tea room space.
Yeah. I meant it.
Correct. What if that materialized relatively soon? Does that, are you leasing that space? Is it in anything that you have?
Currently, the industry room is only rented between November and February and sold as a seasonal rental.
Well, then I'm not gonna increase your stress at all.
I mean, listen, you guys don't give me another room, give me another room, but, you know, we could use the space. As it stands now, but I kind of wanted to watch that trend a little bit better to see how it really, I mean, because we could have parties going on across that whole building.
Well, on this one, I don't think you're gonna get it back.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense, yeah, where that, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
But
we've
does
had
it-
long conversations about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So we.
I'm excited for the
some
restaurant.
discussions with the Lunar New Year folks this morning, and that answer is, that might be very important space to them. And then what's our option B?
Hmm.
And then we've got the preliminary engineering stuff back for the dark space.
Yeah.
And that becomes something that's probably gonna have to be discussed relatively soon. In other words, I don't think we're able to wait.
Hmm.
So if there's impacts, it may not have impacted your section, but it's definitely gonna impact theirs. And that changes things quickly. I mean, it's still got plenty of time left on the clock if we start to use it right now.
Yeah.
If we wait, we're gonna have a problem.
There was a year prior where we had the Lunar New Year celebration actually in the ballroom, and it flowed through the outer areas. Whether or not the Lunar New Year has grown beyond that, I don't know, because more recently it was confined to the industry room.
Well, the food is.
Food.
That's what protects.
Keep it off the
We'll be
carpet.
on top.
But then there was a nighttime event, but that was still in the ballroom.
But a couple thoughts.
Just structuring the day differently, you know, it could
But
still
if-
work.
Because that space isn't in terrible shape, in other words, it's not ready, but this let's assume that we get it reasonably written.
Sure.
There used to be some doors that went from the back loading dock into that space. Those were closed at some point.
Into the dark space?
Yes.
Yes.
Got
They
it.
were just open for Walking Dead, so.
Yep. So we got to look at putting some of those back. And then the bigger trick is in that secondary hall, where you've got, two potentially openings into that space. We really need to work with somebody to see if we can't create those. What it's gonna cost, who's gonna do it, it's gotta be done right.
Yeah.
And then those spaces, we eventually go into the exhibit space anyway, so it's not like we're building something that they're not gonna use. But that would allow us to basically expand into that space relatively quickly at a time period where, the air conditioning from one side, the heat from one side can carry over to the other, I think, with two open doors. But that requires some thought quickly.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, anything else,
It's
It's
not
like a
something
new
we're not
industry
gonna do
space,
anyway.
not a new ballroom.
I know, yeah.
Comment.
But even some exhibit space in the dark space, there's a 3-day conference that's booking next week. It was actually booking this week on Friday at 1 o'clock. It's from Forest Park, and they want 500 people, but they're going to limit it to 300 just so we can come to our space. They're leaving the Hilton Garden Inn, coming over to the Bar Center. There was another conference,
Put more people in the Hilton Garden Inn than you can put it on.
Well, I think because of the COVID spacing issues,
Yeah.
they're minimizing it to 300?
Yeah. Not the Hilton Garden Inn, sorry, the Hilton, the main Hilton by the airport.
Now that I can do, right, I understand. Hilton Garden Inn, I'm thinking, now I gotta do better than that.
Right. The Alfred Dixon from Jonesboro just called, and he has a 1,000-person event. He was trying to use ours, but so we just don't. He thought that we could hold it. Can't really hold that kind of weight. So unless it's inside, outside. So just all kinds of things. And we're booked on the day anyway, so we couldn't do it in the track. But 2 conferences did reschedule to 2022 for August. And then today we had a record 22 tours. I mean, this week we have a record of 22 tours. The most we've ever done have been, I think it was 18 tours in a week, and already we're at 22, and it's only Tuesday. So, that's how busy things are. We're hiring for all part-time positions. If anyone knows anyone, we need bartenders, we need day porters, we need general laborers, we need everybody. So, and we're going to be bringing a receptionist 2 days a week to kind of help with the phone calls and the volume. It's just ramping up. It's that time where it's just ramping up. So that's pretty. Oh, the analytics. I mean, our website from last month to this month increased by 13%. That is a huge jump for any website to increase. 13% in a month is crazy. So that's how major the response has been to the world reopening, especially just here in America. So that's the state of the Morrow Center, guys.
And I always like to look at your profit and loss, but I'll at least give you the benefit of the doubt. We increased some of your equipment services contracts, and that's where your difference is. But if you took that out, then your projections are still what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying earlier. If we took out the 14 grand, I think we're in a small profit of about $688.
Questions, Ms. Knight?
No question.
Ms. Dean? Mr. Plunkett? Ms. Tran? All right,
So question,
good job. I like net income, it works for me.
I'm sorry.
I like net income.
Oh, yeah. All right, guys.
So,
Thank you, Mark.
Good night.
And you send me that list.
Yes, got it.
all right, tell us a little bit more about item number 3.
So, as you see the invitation, it's a celebration of life in honor of former Mayor Jim Millarns. And his daughter has asked me to make sure you're all invited, and the staff was invited. And, for any of you who know of people that he worked with or around, she just asked that you RSVP to let her know what the head count is. It's at the Mark.
Item number 4, discussion of low scope of work proposals.
Well, I was hoping that we would have all 3 proposals submitted, but we're still one shot. Hopefully, they're supposed to have it in by midnight tonight. So we'll need to forego that until the next meeting. Because we're waiting on, this is the 4 scopes of work: the median, the path clearing, the placemaking at Murphy Drive, and the path connection at the dog park up to the existing trail. And that we combined, remember, we put it out to bid, we only got 1 proposal. We put it, not to bid, I'm sorry, we put it out to request for quotes, then we put it out again, having combined them all, so one company could get all four instead of seeing them as small projects. And that fortunately is good, hopefully it's gonna lead to three, we've got two already, three, proposals that you all require so that we can make a decision.
Sweet. Any questions? Renee?
No question.
Torben? Come on, Ms. Tran? Item 5, tax exemption. Couple things. First, we know that there was an error in the tax communication on the city of Morrow's homestead exemption. It was not correct on the one that went out. The good news about something like that is it required us to look at a number of our citizens' tax potentials, in other words, what they're listing their values as. And in the particular real estate world, some of those are still relatively low in comparison to what's actually happening out there. So the error is going to get corrected, and we'll send out a notice, and I think that's coming out from the city. that will-
Well, the English version and the Spanish version have already been in the mail, but we need someone to approve, hopefully maybe Councilman Qua or Councilwoman Tran, to approve the Vietnamese version, maybe hopefully tomorrow, so we can get those out as well.
And we talked to the tax commissioner. One of the reasons they weren't sending this out in a repeat is they're gonna send us the link. So that way, if somebody wanted to go to a link, they could see how yours would be changed as a citizen of Morrow. But because they don't do the other county or the other cities, it doesn't matter if they were right or wrong. They're the exemption. They never send out the tax bill. The Forest Park sends out there, the Riverville sends out ours. So Morrow just would do its own. So they promised us the link. And then the next part, which is kind of unique, is you got a scenario where you may not feel like the value of your home went up tremendously, but the resales that we were able to produce, right? And what that amounts to is, let's say Foxcroft, we know you've got a house in that subdivision that's listed at $299. That's a pretty remarkable, change in terms of what you expect. Where the average person received an assessment this year that was closer to say 1.8. At some point, the tax assessor has to be active, right? It is a fair market value, and it's gonna be based on those resales. And those resales weren't like 1 or 2, it was between 225 and 260, and that was about 8. There's only 80 homes in the subdivision. So those are gonna be used, and we're gonna have a scenario, maybe not so much this year, but certainly by next year, where people are gonna have some changes. If you have a new tax assessor that's just been around, what if he goes to real fair market value? What if you've been used to seeing 100,000, 110,000, and tomorrow you see 250,000? That's not possible. And as a matter of fact, I think it's highly likely. And one of the things I want to promote is, before we get there, to realize where the trend is going. And having met with the tax commissioner today, they don't disagree with me, is that these numbers are going to change dramatically. And it's going to cause people to have some heart failure in terms of what's that. Now, a number of those aren't going to be anything the city can do about it. I can't do anything about your school tax. I can't do anything about your county taxes. But the theory is that your valuations go up. You're supposed to have some offset in terms of your tax rate. What I would promote would be a change in your homestead exemption from $150,000 to $200,000. That gives the ability for the city to have some flexibility. And if, let's say you're in the real estate business, you're in the rental property business, real estate in the city, houses in the city, renting. That's a commercial business. That's a business enterprise. You're not going to get that reduction. Somebody who lives here would be entitled to that deduction. We gave them, they asked for, they voted on the original exemption in 2004. If you just took the time value of money or a CPI adjustment of almost any reasonable number, a change along those lines would be very supportive. In other words, $1 from 2004 versus $1 today is there. I want to have the discussion, but I also want to actually put it in the form of making it move forward. And that means that we would allow the citizens to vote on a homestead exemption change. And I realize it's assessed, right? Fair market value is 150, we go to 200, the assessment just simply changes 40% of the value, right? So that changes it from 60,000 to 80,000. So let's just open the floor for discussion. Ms. Snyder.
I think it's, an interesting idea to kind of work through the numbers. Maybe even just having an example of a couple of the higher price homes in the city, because not all of the homes in the city would, you know, be greatly impacted. Some subdivisions more than others, but being a visual person, if someone could kind of provide us an example of what that difference would be, just to project so we can see dollar value and understand, you know, but it sounds like, the flexibility that we have as a government to impact the assessed value, it's going to go up, you know, it's going
And
to.
technically already hasn't, just people
Yeah.
hasn't caught up to it.
And so if we can impact that at the city level, then let's investigate it, let's understand what that'll look like, and have better discussions.
I agree. And there again, you know, to make it available for citizens to be able to understand what, you know, type of changes are gonna occur before it happens.
Yeah, I like the idea, you know, that if we could, want to ease some of the way conditions.
Yeah, because again, it won't be county, and it won't be any school tax, but
Yeah,
what the
but-
city can impact.
Yeah, there's
Let's
still,
take a look at it.
I mean, let's face it, I doubt the school system, because of the 20 mils and the impacts they're having, they're gonna keep it the way it is. The county might have a slight number, but it won't be much. Not, in other words, you're gonna pay more, but it won't be going to us. That may not make you feel better, but at least we've done our part. Ms. Tran?
No comment?
Okay, so kind of as a scope of work, just because you're bored, Chris, let's look at what that means for us, you know, in terms of an economic impact. It can't be tremendously, our residential community doesn't support our tax base. And we know that there's gonna be some folks that run a business, you know, rental enterprise, and you know, that's just the cost of doing business. They're gonna have to adjust for it. When's our, you know, it takes a while to be able to advertise this and actually get it on the ballot. What's our timeline?
Well, we don't have the tax digest yet, right?
Well, next ballots.
Oh, the November?
Yeah.
Right, but we have some advertising we have to do. to
Yeah,
get it.
we have time if the, because I think it's like a 3-month, you'd have to pass the ordinance first and then put it on the ballot. So you've got time, but it's not lots of time. We'll create a timeline for it.
And let's get come up with some financial number that makes sense. We don't have to wait until next time to get it. As soon as you got it, send it to them. And let them ask questions so that, you know, that reduces, you know, tricky questions we might not be able to answer while we're sitting here. Okay, item number 6, residential sprinklers, discuss a maintenance plan. Kind of backing into why is, we know that a number of the newer homes require a residential sprinkler system. Georgia law no longer allows you to have that kind of code, but ours is exempt as long as we don't make any changes. We're personally aware of a scenario where some of them have been disconnected and some of them simply aren't maintained. So what we're asking for, and I talked to the chief earlier today, is to come up with some better answers and see what we can do, and at least have a marketing campaign. In other words, we don't want to have you required to do an annual inspection that costs you $300 a
We
year.
don't want to trigger a hardship.
That's correct. But what we would like to do is explain to you how they work. So, you know, the one I sheared off with my hands, that one obviously didn't work. And it's not going to be very valuable to you when you try to get it to work. So if you at least know how to make a change, I think that's a marketing thing. And maybe we send it in, you know, we don't have to send it to everybody, but we can. But, you know, that's the thought. Comments along those lines? Chief, you want to kind of pick up from there?
I called a sprinkler company today that installed the sprinkler on Carl Drive that I told you about in the meeting. And they do the annual inspections. And they say usually those are driven by the insurance carrier. The insurance carrier is giving a discount for a home with a sprinkler system, so they require that homeowners submit an annual inspection report in order to maintain that discount. So I was going to check with some of the insurance carriers in the city to see if that's the thing that they're doing as well. because I don't think, the city wants to get into mandating that thing, but if there's somebody, if there's incentives for the homeowner to save money, and honestly, I would imagine some of the homeowner policy writers don't even know some of these homes have sprinklers. It's probably not revealed in the conversation or assessment or whatever. So I think there's an opportunity there to get more of them inspected by going through the insurance carrier. This guy said they're doing a lot in the Woodstock and Marietta area, and I said, is that because the code requires it? And he said, no, that there's a lot of homes with sprinklers up there, and the insurance carrier is making them do the inspection in order to maintain the discount. So I don't know what the discount is, but I would imagine one would probably offset the other as far as cost goes.
If they got the discount, maybe. But
Yeah,
I
you
don't want
wanna
to be
be
in a
careful not to
situation where
trigger
we charge people, not charge, end up costing them
Right.
$200-300.
Right.
Especially 15 years later when it's probably not in great shape to start with. And, you know, how contractors are, you know, yes, ma'am, I can help you this door, you fix all this, that's $1,500 like a water heater. I don't want to go down that road if we can help it.
And this guy said they normally charge $250 for an annual inspection.
That would make me feel better. He has a house with a sprinkler system. So I don't have one, so I just say, so Dorothy doesn't have one. Unless you pull one, but you got one in the yard.
They got hoses.
And again, you know, we don't wanna, trigger a hardship to anything.
Yeah, especially, you know, in, we bought a house with the sprinkler system installed, and we think it's gonna work in case of fire, you know, go on and find out that it's not working, it's gonna be something.
Well, we should gently start the marketing behind the discussion for the maintenance. I fully agree with that. And we'll find out probably pretty quickly when some people turn these things on and can't turn them off. That'll be the valves, right? In other words, I might get it open, I might not get it closed. And those are things we just have to think of what we're gonna do when we actually reach that scenario. Because the seat comes directly off your water meter. In other words, once you open this thing and you can't close it, you can turn the water off at your house, but you're not gonna be able to do much else. And it wouldn't hurt to have a couple backup plans that kind of says where are parts available. In other words, if we have an issue with this, where can you get some parts? And maybe have some service people that actually work on it. You know, some people won't iron, but who do you call? 1-800-plumber isn't gonna do it. First off, if they showed up, I don't think they're gonna get it right. So you've got to be able to give them some advice. Fair enough.
Resources.
Resources, yes, that's good.
One that our insurance give us the discount for that kind of thing. You don't know, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Afraid you almost asked. right?
you want the best case scenario, for people to save money, but again, I don't want this to be something that rolls out and it creates a hardship, whether it's, things breaking or.
Two things, you know.
Not,
Maybe
not,
Kathy could
yeah.
Two things.
Kathy, you went?
Good cost to maintain it, and then you find out when the fire happens, the system not working, and another thing.
You know, I mean, you know,
Well,
it's
remember, the
not like,
state of Georgia
it's
doesn't
not
require.
like a smoke alarm, you can push the button and test it, it makes you
Right.
see that.
Yeah,
it's-
it takes
Yeah,
a licensed
yeah.
person to come out and
Right, you know,
inspect
it's
that.
like, I mean, to test it.
Plus, in new construction, one of the things I also asked the chief was, when this was originally put in, at least in terms of pitch to the city council, it was pitched as a very, you know, inexpensive in comparison option that was put in there, it was mandated by law. Now, the state of Georgia doesn't even allow you to have that mandate. So then the question really does come back is, how expensive is it today? Are we still living that dream? Or are we spending, you know, are we gonna cost our future homeowners, you know, larger amounts of money? And I really, like you said, it would save my life, I appreciate that. But, you know.
Nobody chooses that option until they need it.
Right.
Well, especially if it's mine, there might be a few people turn it on. But you do want to make it so that it's cost effective, right? We have to compete in a fair world out there. And we want to make sure it's maintained to some level, or at least explain to them how to maintain it, which I think is important. And new construction, you got a better chance of maintaining it. 15 years later, I'm sure Dorothy, or not Dorothy, but Renee, hits her flush valve every year. You know, quality, look at me now, but I don't know where it is. And that's not a good sign. So, but let's walk it forward, let's be reasonable, and let's see if we can come up with something that works for everybody. Questions?
No question, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tran.
I'm good for now.
Okay, next one's still you, Chief, vaccine update.
Okay. I'm gonna ask Chief Moss to come up with me also. He's the numbers guy on the vaccine. He's gonna give us some information, first about numbers and what we have in stock and that sort of thing, so.
So to date, we have given 1,425 shots. The demand has dropped off significantly, as you've probably heard on the news and everywhere else. So at this point in time, I'm taking some of the first doses and doubling them up on certain weeks so that we can keep our waste down to a minimum. Right now we have 370 doses that we have stored here in the freezer. And from this date forward, I have 30 shots scheduled right now. So that's where, and that's over the next 3 weeks. Last week we didn't do shots because I had such a low number on that day that I doubled them up for this coming Friday. Yeah, again, you know, with the dose, they come in 10 dose vials, so I have to kind of keep my numbers to where I'm not having to take 2 shots out of a vial and throw the rest of them away to be with those. So with the, you know, with the decreased demand, and I've gotten some information from Clayton State University, who's doing those down there, and Christian's Pharmacy, where we store some of our other drugs. I was talking to him yesterday. Demand's down everywhere. You know, it's not just us. Now, Moderna that we use is still in the process, I think, of approving for the children's doses, but with the children that they have approved for Pfizer, some of them have seen a little bit of an uptick, not anything huge. And so really at this point in time, it's just a scheduling issue, trying to keep the numbers worked out to where they are, and then we'll be up against some expiration dates coming in September and October because the vaccine does have a pretty short shelf life. You know, generally 6 to 7 months is where they'll give it to us. So in September, October, we start coming up against some expiration dates. Chief, you want to address that?
So how many we got scheduled for this week? 2?
This week I have 11 doses, 11 second dose shots and 2 first doses. So the schedule opens up. So the numbers that I said are all second dose, and I do open up a set for first dose to see if I can straighten my numbers out. This week I have 2 people that are signed up for a first dose, and then 11 second doses. Next week is one of my doubled up weeks again, and I have 15 second doses on that day, and I haven't opened up yet for the first dose. I'll open up after we finish this Friday. I'll open up for the next week's first doses. Very low, but so far I've got 2 first doses for Friday.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you all know if Clayton State is going to require students in the fall to be vaccinated?
I don't know that they're going to require it. Now, we've had a great relationship with Clayton State, and I don't think I brought that up before. First, they were helping us store our vaccines. We also have sent some of our folks down to help them on their mass vaccination days. We sent a couple of our folks down to help on mass vaccination day and did 580 shots in one day at Clayton State. We were a part of that, so it's probably had a really great partnership with them. So I'll ask. I'll be glad to ask that question.
The reason why I ask is because if there's an opportunity for us to partner so that we kind of phase out the doses that we have as the demand decreases, you know, working with schools or universities that are going to require students to be vaccinated. Clayton State is, you know, in the city, so that might be an opportunity to kind of, when the time comes, phase out.
Yeah, we can do that. They are primarily Pfizer. On the other one, they do have some Moderna, and we have partnered. We talk to each other on vaccine days. You know, she'll call me and say, "Do you have any extra?" And I'll say yes, no, and I do the same with her. They have a very small amount of Moderna. In fact, they've sent some of their second doses as she faded out and what Moderna she had left. She would send some of them over here to get her second dose. You know, she said, "If you got some extras, can you give them a second dose?" I'd say, "Sure, you know, absolutely, come on." And so we have vaccinated a few of the students down there, but if she's willing to go back to some Moderna, and I know some people have on big stocks. The pharmacist over there had a large stock of vaccine left, and he said, basically, I'll probably have 600. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And Clayton State has actually advertised, there's a way to advertise out there that you have extra stock that you're willing to give up to somebody. And now I haven't talked to Ms. Parks in a couple of weeks, but she said, last time I did talk to her, she said, I've been advertising 300 doses that I'm willing to give up of the Moderna, and I've had no takers. And so I don't know if there's a grand plan at the state to begin the collection process, because I know there's other countries that can use this if they're gonna start giving it out. But the demand everywhere, again, is way down, and people are now, at this point in time, starting to figure an exit strategy and what we can do to, not to just have to throw vaccine away. We don't wanna do that.
What's the lifespan?
I'm sorry, sir?
What's the lifespan? I mean, I know that's.
It's about 6 to 7 months when we get them in. We started getting our vaccines in February, and we had some expiration dates that begin in maybe late August, but we've already gotten rid of that set. Yeah, I think the first expiration date we have right now is in September with our remaining doses. I've got a spreadsheet in there with all the expiration dates. But we start in September, but it's pretty short shelf life, even frozen the way that they are. They're generally 6 to 7 months since the expiration, so they go out fairly quick.
We have I know there's an exit thought process, but let's just hold just a second on that. When you look at some of the things, Johns Hopkins and the different things they have, using other countries as an example, where right now it's cold there, right, say Brazil or other places, it seems like they got a second little hit, right? So if we all make an exit strategy, and about that time, somebody who's decided not to have the vaccine changes his mind, there's gonna be a pop, and we're gonna have that one more time where we're gonna have a demand that's gonna be greater than supply, and we're gonna get a hit for, you gave your supply away. It may not be valid simply because it may not last that long, but it does cause me a little concern that flu season, if you want to call it that, may come back, and there might be another group that might change their mind. Just keep it in your memory bank that says, for all of those that are out there, there's a way to get into that, fall category where we got a bump last year. I'd like to be ready for it. Maybe not us specifically, but at least somebody out there should be ready.
That would be forecasting what you need to order, because if the expiration date's coming up, you are really in September, that's still before flu season. So I don't know if you all anticipated ordering more.
Well, a couple of things. Keep in mind that a vial is 10 doses. And once you open it, it's only good for 6 hours. So we've got 11 second doses and 2 first doses scheduled for Thursday or Friday. Friday. So if nobody else signs up, that's 7 doses we have to waste. Okay, we don't want to waste. We've been really good stewards with this vaccine. In fact, I think only 1 week did we have waste. We've chased people down on the track, literally, to give shots. We've had a lot of people come in from the track to get shots, but we tried everything to get rid of those doses. So that's something to think about going forward. If we're only getting 2 people to sign up, are we being good stewards with that vial of 10 if we're having to waste 8? So if we give the 2 first doses this Friday, we have to schedule them for 4 weeks. And if we stop the program, that's only 2 doses we're going to pull in 4 weeks from that vial of 10.
Unless you schedule new doses on the same day.
Right, but if
the
we're
demand's
gone
not there,
from
then.
70 down to 2,
Right.
now I don't, unless something happens and it ticks back up, but we're in the summer, so we don't anticipate that.
I'm more into focusing on that 3 or 4 month lapse now. Do what you got to do to get to there. Just don't walk away from the program, because I want to be sitting around there in case we get that secondary bump. And we might be one of the only people who takes that far ahead.
Yeah, if I can add in, we'll always maintain the ability to order. There wouldn't be shut down at that point. I would just take the inventory down, and the state can see that. But as long as we maintain that we're still a part of all, we keep our paperwork up and we keep the program going, I could at any point in time go back in the system and order. And there's a pretty abundant amount of that, whatever you want to use out there right now. Even the single shots, and then there's talk of a 4th one coming out. But the Moderna is very accessible right now, and I wouldn't see that change too much. I think that if even if we went down to 0 on our stock, if we decided in another month, oh wait, there's an uptick, let's go start the program again, it would be easy enough. We wouldn't be we wouldn't be severing our ties with the state and the ability to order the vaccine and just open back up into some shots.
Are we doing the 12, the number?
Not yet, not yet. We're still at 18 and over.
18 and over.
The Pfizer has gone down to 12. Moderna is in the midst of taking care of that. And the college does have Pfizer, so they can do 12, and they're trying to kind of stay in a private piece. But the county has Pfizer, and Chief looked it up, there's 20 providers. And so,
Actually, there was, 2 weeks ago, within 5 miles of Morrow, there's 27 locations giving the vaccine now. Now, a lot of those are walk-ups, so they don't have to schedule an appointment anymore. You just walk into Walmart or whatever, and they give you the shot. So that's,
Other concern, we have, a special election coming up, for Sona. Yeah, and our community room is usually used for polling, so how are we going to do that?
Well, yeah, and so
Is
when
that
we talked
August?
earlier about the reduction, are we getting to that or not? Like we were gonna reduce it to 1 day a month maybe? Are you
well,
saying-
that was something I hadn't thought about.
Yeah.
That was a suggestion we could certainly consider.
And
Stop
so I
doing
just,
it
I
weekly
want
and
the
just
council
do
to
it
hear
once a
that,
month.
you know, what's the thought process on, to your point, keeping it staged, keeping our access to ordering, you know, things that are going on, but maybe it's trying to minimize it to once a month, because it's 4 weeks in between, right? And instead of trying to have it every week. But to Dorothy's point, at some point, we've got to make sure all the second doses are complete, and we're not accepting new doses, so that during that special election, that when we, for however many weeks it lasts, we have, that community room has to be available for that, so. And that'll be
Well,
all.
that's August, right? So will they be?
Of course,
early?
now, with so few, there's certainly probably other options,
Okay.
where we could have them done, not just the community.
That works. I know we got the meeting, but I'm gonna just do this other one, so I know that at the end of our meeting, we gotta do an executive session. But talk to me about your ambulance transport rates.
Okay. So, we have a resolution from 2007 that we base our ambulance billing fees off of. And we've looked at this a few times over the years, and what that resolution says is that we will charge for transport the average between the providers within the county. There's only 3 providers, us, Forest Park, and Clayton County. So I had Chief Moss reach out to those 2 agencies, get their current rates, and you'll see that on the spreadsheet where it says FPFD, that's Forest Park, CCFS is Clayton County. That's what they're currently billing for the 3 different levels of transport. And so you can see what we currently charge, and to get up to that average, it's under that yellow box where it says Morrow proposed. So one of them goes up $150 to transport, the other one's $175. The billing company also suggested that we should go up a couple of dollars on the mileage. So I got it at 14. When I first started working here in 2004, we used to charge for disposables, like oxygen masks and this sort of thing. And for whatever reason, at some point we stopped. That's something that we can bill for. And Medicare and Medicaid won't pay it, but private insurance will. And so it's a missed opportunity to recover some of those costs. Our budget for medical supplies is about $20,000 a year. We usually spend all of that. So we can recoup some of that by charging for these fees here.
A couple things, we still bill our residents insurance, but if they don't have the insurance, it's still free.
If they don't have the insurance, or if the insurance doesn't pay, or they don't pay the full amount, we don't go after
So we're all good with that.
the person for collection.
Then the next one is, let's use Clayton County's number right there, and just use the top one, 11. How does that compare to the rest of Metro Atlanta? Is that pretty much what everybody else is charging?
That I don't know. I've not reached out to any other agency in Metro Atlanta to see what the rates are.
And then here's one reason, that regardless of which ambulance shows up, Clayton County's or ours, right, we're still getting excellent service. You know, we're not secondary to anybody. We've got a nice support, we've got trained staff, and I'm hesitant to give up a nickel right now. So I don't want to subsidize an insurance company, because I pay health insurance, everybody else does, so Clayton County's gonna charge me $1,100. I'll charge me $1,100 too. Why? Because I want to pay you like they get paid. And if you guys want to keep taking a discounted rate on your salary, you can still take a discounted rate on an ambulance. I don't think that's fair. So I would look at it and say, if it's a reasonable number, and Clayton County much bigger than we are, they charge it. I'm not willing to back in and discount Prudential. They don't give me a discount for living in the city, my health insurance didn't go down. What's your thoughts?
I can see the logic in that. I mean, it's the quality of the service, and the service is the same, and the destination is the same. We have a quicker response time because our residents are 5 minutes away in any direction, then it would be us responding. I can see the logic in that.
I agree.
Good. Well,
Yeah, I agree.
Ms. Tran,
Especially when it's.
I'm good.
don't gouge them, just treat me like Clayton County.
Okay.
So do I hear we should draft the ordinance for first reading at the next meeting?
Yes.
To match Clayton County's?
Yeah, and it wouldn't hurt my feelings if we had the other metro areas, just in terms of what the bigger companies are charging. Just-
Okay,
just
I can
make
find
sure
it out.
that Clayton
And so
County-
these fees are on our fee schedule.
Correct.
So that's where that would need to be changed.
Yeah, we'll have to write it on.
Okay.
Good, second. All right, we will, anybody need left?
Mayor, before we go to the meeting, could I point out one concern?
Sure.
It's in the, it's about UIA. So UIA board members will only contain 3 members. And that will make them very difficult for those members to work together, because if the one talk with the other, that would form a quorum, and they cannot make any discussion. And that board is very important that they make decisions on buying, selling properties, leases. So, and if they cannot talk to each other more than just in a meeting, whatever, I don't think that's a good practice. So my suggestion is that that we need to look into that and amend that to where we should have 5 members. So 2 can talk with each other and prior to meeting, so they can get the work done more efficient.
Okay. If y'all want to get a cup of coffee, we'll be back in 2 minutes.
All right.
The continuation of the work session. Discuss SPOS management. Ms. Reddick.
Yes, sir. So, as you have certainly seen in your own copies of the budget, we discussed it during the budget meeting, the all-day event, and more recently, your finance director just mentioned it. We do have a very aggressive schedule of SPOS expenditures for the current budget, the coming budget year, and the new SPOS. That is coupled with the existing projects from both the 2008 and the 2014 SPOS. So you actually, as a council, have discussed in prior meetings, more than one, the need to hire a manager to manage SPOS projects. And I would like to recommend, well, it's not so much recommend, it's sort of to let us know that I'm going to be partnering with Mark Whitley, who you met tonight, who has been the construction administrator for our Jester's Creek Phase 3. And he's going to help us. He's a certified project manager. He is a civil engineer. He has a lot of professionals in his fold, including a general contractor, so that we can get these projects done. Now, at some point, there's small things, like what he didn't mention to you tonight is any county meeting of the stormwater management. Since our last public works director left, he attends them on our behalf because he's already going to be there. He serves as our representative. That's nothing he's ever invoiced us for. And so he's very familiar with the area. He has worked in throughout Clayton County and Henry County for the better part of 30 years. So I'm just like to hear from the council if there's any opposition to that. If it ever comes to a place where we have to contract with them, maybe on particular SPOS, obviously that would have to come before you. But right now, we would just use him as a professional service, which is doesn't require a bid or not by state purchasing policy nor our own purchasing policy. So I just, open that up for discussion if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead. Discussions about, more quickly, obviously professional management services, we cannot use an internal person and get recovered from SPOS, right? That's how that works?
Well,
Right now, you don't have a person here. Right?
I don't know that there may be circumstances under which we could use portions, and it's all about the threshold. The $100,000 is a big threshold in state purchasing policy, whether it's SPOS or otherwise. But as our staff capacity, we do not have the capacity to manage, if what we're looking at is $100,000 in SPOS projects a month. And that's something that we had started the conversation actually last year, the end of last year, that this understanding that we were gonna have to bring somebody on staff, and probably a hire wouldn't be smart, because when the SPOS money is spent, you don't wanna necessarily have a SPOS manager for money you don't have anymore, so.
Open discussion, Ms. Knight?
So, the need, I can understand. I would prefer the perspective to be a fresh conversation rather than the assumption that we recall a casual conversation from the past. So let's reset that thought process. It may have been discussed in brief passing. It may have been discussed for 10 minutes, but my preference is to have a fresh conversation, which we have the opportunity to do now. Is Mark Whitlow the one and only person that's capable of this service? I know, there's probably more. Does he already do business with the city? Yes. The city, I do understand that, yes. But let's be a little bit more specific and intentional with the conversation that we're beginning today, so that we are identifying the trajectory of the projects, being very clear, because again, we're still kind of the need with understanding what's going on out of the district and being precise, I guess that's the best word I can find right now, about what has to be done, the cost of what needs to get done. We still don't have that. So I want us to have clarified, intentional conversations rather than referencing something that may have happened a year ago for 5 minutes. That's my perspective. Is there a need for someone? Probably so, but can we drill down on getting the information that the council has requested previously with regard to what needs to get done at the district, the costs?
Yeah, I think I've seen something that they've got some. It's not presented yet.
I
It's
haven't
the
seen it.
basic.
And
Unfortunately, some of it, let's just say some of its accuracy is not very good.
Yeah.
But
I
that
can
person's not here
appreciate.
anymore, so it doesn't
No,
matter.
again,
Well,
we'll
and I
send it, but to be clear, it's in your budget. I mean, the SPOS projects are in your budget. So I just want to make sure we're.
And
Could we have-
we understand that it's in the budget, but having targeted, concise conversations is a lot better for us to have as a takeaway.
No, I agree, and that they have it. I've read it in terms of, because we were asking, not just for that, but a number of those
But,
projects.
right, the number of projects that we just.
But in a first glance, even as somebody who wouldn't do this for a living, your next answer is literally gonna be, I'm not sure I believe that.
Right.
And then that almost says, well, that wasn't very good. How do we update it to get something a little more accurate? And that's a challenge. We don't want to bring you something that's just not accurate. I mean, on face value, you reach a conclusion quickly, it's not accurate. We have no problem giving it to you.
Sure.
And I think we should make it available, but you're,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
know that it's
Give us
accurate.
something to work
Also,
on.
yeah,
You can do that. We have it, but
Yeah.
But
just
remember-
know that don't come in next, I'm not saying you would, but the first thing you're gonna say is, I don't believe it. I agree.
No, in fact, it should have already been sent. I thought it was my bad for not making sure that department head was asked to send that to you, and I was told that he sent it to you. So I should have gone back and checked. But anyway, we'll get that before
But you would
before I
agree
fall
that
asleep tonight.
it's not remotely.
Right, but just remember, that's different than having somebody to get them done.
Agreed.
So,
No,
yeah,
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
because I mean, we just, and, you know, it just,
There are a lot of moving parts, and as a city our size, you know, we want to have a big presence, but we don't always have the staff to create that big presence. So we know that our staff isn't going to get all this work done. But having someone who is managing the moving parts, that does make sense. But let's also, as a council, have some good information. Even if it starts off being wonky, at least let's have something so that we have the conversational points to understand. We're getting closer to understanding what the cost is going to be.
Plus, we also
Well-
have at least some, I don't want to say totality, but a number of projects throughout the whole city.
Mhm.
Where is that potential stage at? And I agree, totally agree.
Yeah, help us out to understand the narrative of the coming year, what project are we expecting, so we understand the need, so we can have better in making the right decision.
well, and again, for your fiscal year 22, not the other things, your fiscal year 22 project list is in your budget. So that's part of what, when Chris was specifically saying, it's an aggressive project list, and it's not even gonna be all the projects you're gonna see on the list I'm gonna send you this evening, because that's more than one fiscal year. So fiscal year 22 projects are enumerated in your budget, so that hopefully gives at least a clear project list for the coming fiscal year, but it doesn't cover everything that we have done or in the process of doing from fiscal year 21.
And we'll be open about it. It's not,
For this, position, how,
It's not a position, I mean,
I mean,
I don't wanna,
the
yeah, like, it's
project
it's
manager.
kind of contract
Right.
labor.
So it's,
if
is there an agreement or something like that we will?
Well,
have?
that's what I'm saying, is it may get to a point where if it's say, in a typical SPOS scenario, it may be either a staff person that's hired to do it, like the county has a SPOS manager on staff,
Right.
or it's somebody who's hired per project, and it may
Per project,
end up
right.
being a percentage of the project amount. And that would have to be a contract that you
Okay.
all approve. But just in some of the more preliminary stuff, just getting the projects going, would be sort of like just being invoiced, like a professional service, like your, well, I don't want to say it like your attorney, because you actually voted on that, but.
So what does the slot manager do besides tracking the expenses of the slot?
He manages the project, which basically might be, you know, just like you had somebody out there, he's looking at the project, he's making sure that it's moving in a timeline. Otherwise, some of these things get lost. And we all understood that in just recent memory, where we've approved things as a city council months ago, you know, and it's like, where is it, like, for real? You know?
Making sure we have the yellow tags on the wood.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's construction
You could
administration,
pick,
absolutely.
You know, kind of, an example would be projects that have naturally reached a stall point, for example, like the sidewalks on Lake Park.
I was gonna say the
You know, my
sidewalks.
goodness, I mean, at some point, you'd think we could all build them ourselves for faster than that. But there's, you know, real technical and legal hiccups that have caused us problems. Then we've got the trail system, a similar, not that issue, but we have a drainage issue. And that drainage issue is gonna say, that trail is going to sink if we don't solve it. Well, we can either solve it now, but we still don't have it in the ground, or we can solve it later when it's gonna cost us a couple $100,000 when it sinks. So I think they've got solutions. Might wanna bring that up and just talk
Sure,
about it.
it's on the work session next, if we can
Okay.
segue into that whenever you want to.
Well, let's just continue then, just what we have. Quad, comments? Ms. Tran, comments?
Nothing to comment.
Okay. So the idea, whether it's Mark or somebody else, and the beauty of it is, as long as we're not in a contract that says exclusively, that might allow us to buy some time so we can still move on some. And then if we want, let's say, a true SPOS project manager, we throw it in the mix and come up with the answer. But let's understand we got some things we got to move on, so we can give the city manager the flexibility to say, okay, this might not buy us the next 10 years, but how about some stuff that we've been hoping to get done that really would like to be getting done now? And some of that's in play, right? And we know we're going to be out at least 60 days, maybe 90 days on Public Works Director.
That is
So
very helpful.
when do we need to, move on this? How soon do we need to?
Well, I mean, because the stage we're at now, it doesn't take y'all making a decision.
Mhm.
It's just sort of understanding that we're going to be asking him to assist us on projects and he'll invoice us. But there will come a time where if he's taking on getting all the approved SPOS projects done, he would be identified as the SPOS project manager, and that will take a proposal, I would imagine. But
I think you see where the city council's going. In other words, give us some options,
Well,
but at the same time.
give you some option, where?
Well, in other words, let's say we do a professional project manager, where we look at this more than Mark, as a totality, but for now, allow us to move and continue to move the projects forward as we have them. And if we need something else, we can do that project by project, but just give us some options.
That's by you using Mark, right?
Right.
Well,
I mean, to move there, I mean.
whoever you choose, and one of
Okay.
the things that we see is that everybody can tell you, Warren tells you in his industry, we can know in our industry, is that if you're not giving a sort of a commitment of all the work to somebody, whether it's Lowe or PE Structures or Mark Whitley Engineering or whomever, is that, you know, they've got bigger fish to fry, and you're gonna always be at the bottom of the list, which means we're always going to be waiting months and months and months, and that's what we see time and time again, and that means materials could go up, so.
Which it did, we lost
That's right,
60
that's the
grand.
value of trying to identify a person, because what if they have to expand their staff? They're not gonna do that if we don't have a commitment to
Right.
give them
Right.
something.
So, don't we need to make a commitment?
I think to Councilwoman Knight's point, you need more information before you're ready to make a commitment to him long-term. But in the short
Short
term,
term.
what the mayor is asking for is that
Right.
we just have the liberty to start using.
Some of the projects that are already
Some of our
underway.
bigger stuff isn't on the table.
Like the welcome sign.
Right, right.
Right, and the electricity issue, and the
Right.
Jester's Creek, and the phase 3 of that, so, I mean, we got things that, if we aren't using someone to help us get there, they're just not gonna get done.
Or if they do get done, it might not get done right, because there's nobody checking on our side. I mean, you can have something that passes an inspection, that doesn't necessarily mean it's what the city of Morrow wanted. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Or the order of priority wouldn't hurt my feelings either. Some things are higher priority from our perspective than they might be on a list.
Right.
You know, you might be able to fix somebody's curb, but somebody's drainage in their front yard might take a little bit better priority, I would think. That's right, speed doesn't hurt you.
Right now.
But are we good with that? Just, it starts as a conversation. I think we get the idea behind the conversation. We just don't want to.
So are we gathering more information to make the decision, or we just go ahead and do it?
We're gonna get more information on a series of future decisions, but we're going to engage Mark for the current stuff that we're working on, so that those projects don't stop.
So what is the current project? So are we still hiring this
You're not
plot
hiring.
manager now?
No, we're not hiring a SPOS manager yet. We're informing you of kind of the process the city's working through, getting some informal approvals to kind of say, yes, that's what we're doing. And then we're gonna get some additional information as we move
We're
forward.
keeping him engaged on pretty much what he's already been engaged with, because he's done some work.
Yeah, but, you know, like I say, the welcome signs, you know, where to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
The strata, the phase 3, you know, we've hit some problems there. Now, phase 3 is already working on, so yeah, to your point.
Mhm.
But there are other projects that if we don't get somebody engaged in that role, that they're not gonna move forward.
Well, one of the ones that might be more important to you, let's just say some of our park projects. Some of those are not extensive. They will not move
Yeah.
without it.
Yeah.
That's just a fact, and let's say that number goes on for several months. Some of this is easy, in my opinion, easy. As an example, replacing some of the park equipment. We know we're not gonna put in the park equipment, right? But somebody's gotta order it, somebody's gotta get it, somebody's gotta do the timelines on it. That's important to us, right? And we know that we've approved that, Skylight Park in terms of sand, some of the repairs that are out here. If we don't do that, then who's going to, I guess is a good answer.
So what's the stop with the strata? Is it?
Isn't that for under public works,
Well, at this
on the
particular-
construction?
Some of that is, remember, we put the budget items as the material costs. But in terms of labor and things like that, who's gonna oversee that? Some of it is public works, that is correct, but some of that is not.
And some of it may be public works 6 months from now, but currently, you don't have a public works director. So it's not public works right now. I mean, and I've been exposed to a lot in my 20 years, especially as a grants administrator, and zoning administrator. So I know a lot, but for the same reasons y'all said when you first came in, I just can't manage it all and expect to get it all done. So.
So what's the deal with Strong?
I think that was different. I wouldn't put that under that. I would put that under concepts, how you do that. Obviously, now, if you're taking the next phase for that, that would be environmental, geotechnical.
Yeah, that's what we discussed.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be hiring a splash manager, would you?
Yeah, so
You'd be saying, give me my definitions of these people, surveys. He's not doing surveys.
Yeah, that's not gonna be him.
That's correct.
What?
And those are that data you have to
So
have.
I may disagree with that, but it may be, he may be one of the candidates that ends up doing it. So, you know.
Well,
Because
a
that's
whole
what he
different
does, is
animal.
civil engineering. So if this council is committed to 3 proposals before we do anything, he may be one of the proposals on that project. Is that? No,
I mean,
Who'd you
I don't
say?
see anything wrong with that.
To me, it's more tasks. That project specifically is a series of tasks that might require a phone call, and it might be one of the people who wants to do it.
That's what I'm saying.
That's fine, but
But you
Probably
would
not
have
gonna
to
be
choose, like, are
geotechnical.
you gonna be the project manager? Like, okay, let's say the Strata, the next thing is to do the environmentals, the geotechnical, the surveying, the utility. Somebody's gotta manage to make sure all that happens, or the Strata's not gonna come out of the ground. And it's not gonna be me,
Right.
and it's not gonna be Val, and
Right.
it's not gonna be you.
well, in somewhere you produce a set of plans, and from that set of plans, we get a cost number,
Yeah.
which is very important to us. And it's only then that we really have true marketability to the private sector to be able to deliver something with an idea of what it's gonna cost. But that one is a little bit different than some others, where you have real private, I don't call it a real project, right now it's more of a development. But parts,
Yeah,
that's
something-
real, that's
something
real
that can be
construction out there.
Executed in the
somewhere.
short term, because it's relatively simple.
And some of it's phone calls and some
So
of it's.
he's gonna bridge the gap for right now,
I think so.
and until we,
And we need more dots
Start.
connected,
Right.
you know. To Sylvia's point, we do understand things that are in the budget, but we don't have that snapshot of what has happened to bring us to this point. And, you know, we just want more dots to connect.
Yeah, it's-
And to the mayor's point, you're gonna be surprised at how few there are.
Well, give me something.
Send me the email when you get them. Any other questions related to that as we kind of keep moving forward? No? All right. Next item, welcome sign update. You'll love this one.
So, the welcome signs, which we had originally heard were gonna have the first sign was gonna, had a timeline of the end of May, and the second sign had a timeline of the end of June. Well, we have, and this is just one of those conversations that should have been clarified 8 months ago. There is no current electricity under the road. There is, because at some point in time, maybe it was the expansion, the conduit was crushed and there's no point of origin, so it doesn't serve in its intended capacity. And so that means that you are about to have a welcome sign that can't be turned on. So, again, that should have been something that we had worked out the entire time we were waiting on revisions to the design. We should have all that ready as it's being constructed, not finding out as it's being constructed.
And in fairness to the council itself, we did have some discussions about not being in this position to start with.
Oh, yeah.
And the correction was, we voted on an additional $3,000 some odd dollars for electrical. How do you vote on, I mean, not how do you vote, but how does somebody bring you something to vote on if it doesn't exist? In other words, what did you base your price on? You know, we saw the piece of paper from, I believe it was in Dent Electric, right?
No, that was, it's electric.
It's electric, right? But the point being is somebody, gave us a quote for some thin air stuff. And that's not how it's.
So that's the management problem. Are you saying?
I'm sorry?
Because that information shouldn't get to the council.
Well, if a contractor.
The management
gives you
has to review all the
price.
information, check to see the need, the practical, validate those information before it gets to council to vote.
But how
So
would,
it now it put the council into an awkward situation.
It does, but this
Because
is
management didn't do the job.
a licensed professional delivered you a real price based on a request from a department head. Official letterhead, the whole 9 yards, we're not making this up, you know.
you and I.
And we agreed to it.
So
So-
you and I can verify that.
Yeah, so how would you reach the conclusion that its accuracy wasn't there? It'd be almost like asking you what the amp draw was, unless you went out there with the voltmeter and did the line set yourself. You honestly don't know, you know? So it's more about, you know, well, we won't get into all that.
But
Point being
for
is,
the record, and
we-
to address
it's not
what
that.
Councilman Tran, the council only made the decisions based on their information. I mean, the council didn't drop a ball. The staff did. And that's what we have to put ourselves in a better position to have.
And we're looking for answers to that, by the way. There's a couple options. I'm not sure one's as viable as some have led to believe, but maybe it comes better than what I think it will. But we're working on it. There are some real options, but it's a couple of hurdles we gotta jump through.
Well, when we run into a situation like that, it's clearly critical for the council to get the information more. We need to get the information ahead of time, more than just Friday voting on Tuesday. We won't have enough time to even like case like this. If a council just happen to work and each of us has different knowledge about the city, about the location. One of us might have detected this beforehand. Now we have been having a practice of having the agenda delivered to the council on Thursday or late Friday, like this one. Late Friday we got it at like close to 5 o'clock. So literally we only have Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to study about the package. And it's 81 pages of package, not including the budget, and the budget itself is so many pages and so many things to look and navigate through. So, and I have this concern before, the agenda package is not delivered to the council. It doesn't, the time that we have been having practices doesn't give council enough time to even study the package, the information in the package, because there's times that we contract and making change on, or making ordinance, making changes. Council don't have enough time to be informed,
I don't think
to
that
study about this other
Right.
material.
But Ms. Tran, I don't think that would have changed the fact that there's electrical conduit crushed under a piece of ground. I don't think that's right.
I'm not saying it's not for the chance, I would say it would lower the risk for us. If we get familiar with the discussing items or the project, just like the spot manager, we will put and say, oh, we have this idea and this person, and we in a totally shock. We don't have enough information to discuss or make any input. So giving more time for the council to study the agenda package would help us to do a better job, and we don't have to be sitting in the council meeting and raising so many questions because we didn't have enough time, didn't have a chance to study about that.
On some items, I would agree, and on some items, it's just the nature of business. You gotta be able to-
Yeah, then the longer time we require, the longer we drag the project to take. I mean, some smaller project or items that need to be done as it's come, and to get done as it comes, so I don't think that they do that on purpose though.
Yeah, I mean, it's subjective.
Well, a few
I mean, just
$1,000,
like in the
I
real
don't
world,
think they're
things
correct,
happen.
but
got it.
More than that, we have purchasing policy, we have all the stuff that we need to, all the rules and laws that we need to comply, have given us the package on Friday, expecting us sitting and voting for those items. We are not able to do good for our job.
Another word is you would like to defer on the work to the next, everything to the next meeting, the next 2 weeks, to insert those things.
I mean, that is a
keep it
part
in
of-
town. That way it is, cause, you know, as the information feed, thing, they put it in, I don't think they would do that in the short time period to, on purpose. But, I mean, if you refer to get a longer, request a longer time to process the information, that will defer the job, the project, whatever it is, to longer time to get done.
Let's just look at the ability of the entire city council. Right? None of y'all are shy. Okay? At least if you are, you haven't told me. I think we're pretty open from the standpoint, example, what Warren brought tonight. Yeah, it didn't happen. You know, we got it last minute. I don't think it would have changed remarkably whether you did it this week or 2 weeks from now, but the lost time didn't really matter. You know, it does matter, right? In other words, if we're going to judge, knock it out, get it done. That's what's going to happen. We know that there's a question that people will have. That's the idea of having a work session, is ask the question if you have other comments. I don't know anybody's been denied the ability to speak their mind and be able to say, I want more input than that. And you go, great, then we'll get it, right? That's the idea of a work session discussion. You're adding things to the agenda at your request, at the request, and if you get a vote on that, that's, majority rules kind of thing. So it works, right? It may not be perfect every time, get that. But it's not perfect in my personal world either. My schedule changes, things happen. You get a flat tire on the way to work, you adjust. So I think the system works. Is it perfect? No. Will we strive to achieve to get better? Sure. But I don't know that you get to wait too long. So I think what you have works, and I think we just need to work together to just continue progress.
With a comment. So, we, depending upon the leadership and the council makeup and the thoughts behind the council, prior council, we did have the opportunity to introduce things on a work session so that we had the understanding, the introductory conversation with the work session and the research and follow-up 2 weeks to the next meeting, we were going to vote on. Some things may require that kind of finesse and that timeline. And I think, if we create a hybrid of understanding, some things, the speed of business, with some things, we've got to get it done. If there's a leak in an AC unit and the evaluation was done, and whether it's someone from Public Works or Johnson Controls comes out and speaks to Sylvia, about it, we understand if we prolong this decision, it's going to cost us more. That communication we can certainly understand, but some of the other things where it maybe require an ordinance or a resolution, and there's some level of understanding and conversation that council would like to have, introducing it, and then council understanding that the next meeting, we're gonna vote on it. So you've got to get your questions in. You've got to reach out to the city manager. You've got to reach out to other council members to kind of understand what their thought process is. Some things, I think it would be appropriate to have that framework to do the work.
I agree.
Other questions?
It's just a different practice to help all the council to be informed, so we can make the best decision for taxpayers.
Christine?
Yes, I think that, we have, for the most part, department heads that do all the research. They look into the different things that council asked or city manager asked, and they bring recommendations to the city manager based on their expertise, because we, the council, are not experts in all the fields. So that's why we rely on the recommendations from the city manager who has gathered the information from the staff. So when we start questioning the recommendations of the city manager and the staff, then we're getting into another field that I don't believe that we're all qualified for. So the process is that when something is recommended by the city manager coming based on recommendations from the staff, we understand that the contracts and the agreements and all of that has been already put together and looked at. I don't think we're the creators of the contract, council, we don't do that. So if we understand our part and what our role is, I think things will progress much faster. We know what lane we're supposed to drive in, and we need to stay there in our lane. And that's I think, might be something that we need to take a look at to make sure that we understand our role and what lane we're supposed to be driving in.
Mayor, can I say something?
Well, I see that we depend on the staff, but when the staff come to you with asking for spending $50,000 of taxpayer money and give you the two companies which has used the same PE engineering, that two companies have the same website, and you recommend us to spend more tax dollars. I don't see the sense of that. And by the end of the day, we are the council. It's our responsibility as the final decision. So ideally, we would love to depend on, and we would love to hear tax recommendations, but we also have our due diligence that we need to do, that we have to look out for the best interest for the taxpayer. Sometimes the tax recommendation doesn't go the right direction.
We're going to move on from that discussion. We did get back, and I'm going to bypass 13 and, well, no. It's not in there, but it's under 15 in terms of some things. We engaged the structural engineers for the dark space, and that was emailed to you today.
No, but what, did you email it to the council?
Yeah, just got it, so I'll
Yeah,
email him. But he's finalizing everything and.
Yes, this is a draft, but I've got a draft in it.
I know because you prefer a hard copy, so I just don't know that Val's had a chance to email it to you.
Just print it out.
All right. I haven't read it yet, okay? But anyway, the
So
point
if
is,
you'll email it to the council.
it's back. Okay? I'm sure the depth of it will be beyond some of my abilities in terms of, chord structures and things like that. But the point is now we have it. And somewhere in there, we now get to use this to make additional decisions. And that will be both for potentially the top floor, because that top floor, if it's an exhibit space, what can we put on it, what can't we? And I'm just paraphrasing some things I heard. One of those was we were wanting to have like a car show in there.
Right.
And they say for a car, that you have to have 40 pounds per square inch, and it appears that it's 100, so that makes that work.
I know you haven't had a chance to look at it, but I guess in my mind, I'm still curious about the escalators and access and
And the escalators, if everything went in right
remaining
now,
where it is versus
I think you take the escalators out.
moving it, yeah.
And just say, our top floor exhibit space becomes very important to us, and that, the location of those just doesn't work.
Right.
We have a letter of intent for somebody downstairs, there's several things that's still working in that. And I'll just give you one example, is they said that the number of people that they would have down there would require an additional 140 tons of air conditioning. Now, depending on the chillers we have in there, are just obsolete, right? And we know that the water tower was originally on the ceiling, and when they did the demo, they just cut the pipes up. It doesn't exist anymore. Inside, outside, it's just gone, which is okay. We were gonna replace it anyway. But that's just something that's just an added component. So as we're doing that, it's gonna get into a cost number sync, and it's just simply gonna say, for normal retail use, example of what it was, that kind of what you have down there for air handlers will suffice. For the space as it's recommended,
Right.
that would be slightly different. Same
Right.
thing would be for restaurants. Well, all of those might add up to a number that might make it where you gotta say, okay, I see your letter of intent, but those numbers aren't gonna equate to brand new air conditioning and these other
Right.
things. We're gonna have to raise the ante a little bit.
Right.
And see if they still want to participate.
Right.
And if they don't, well, that's okay.
Right.
But because the air conditioning is only gonna be added one time, we've got to make a decision for the full building.
To
And so-
upgrade completely, or
Yes.
this is where we are?
Yeah, you'll have some upgrades, but then the question comes down to, for that type of use,
Mhm.
the answer probably no. And the other use may be retail, and that answer is yes. You don't have to make a quick decision today, but it is one of those that says you now have it back, and there'll be a series of discussions, and it's all about use. I think the upstairs is a lot easier to have a discussion about it. Downstairs depends on the LOI. Escalators go away. Potentially, you have issues now still related to sound. That was a pretty big one for us. It looks like
The
the
sound at the Morrow
electrical.
Center went out today.
The electrical amp drop, in terms of what they had down there, appeared to be sufficient for both the need of the potential LOI downstairs as well as what we have upstairs. There still was some questions about grease interceptors and things like that on that lower floor. Nobody's got those answers yet. And if we had to have an additional elevator bank, which we would need, then we would just simply say, our cost of it. And those are, before you can move forward on a true LOI, those are all the things that you need to know.
Should know.
And then you know kind of where we're at. But that also does back into, say, the Lunar New Year. You know, you gotta open that space up. Now we're into interesting discussions about polished floors, you know, what it's gonna look like. But you'll have that same discussion upstairs and downstairs, so.
How finished is finished gonna be for, you know, the easiest way to kind of summarize?
And I wish I knew that answer.
Yeah, but we
there,
don't.
there was several. There was a stone polish, there was an epoxy, then it started to get really crazy. And I'm just thinking something closer to what the tea room looks like now,
Mhm.
because that's what some of the plans showed back. It's just a standard floor, whichever one's easier, I think. I give you polished concrete, I don't mind, but paint it,
That's,
time to paint it, and you gotta repaint it, so.
Safe.
Every day, you don't pay.
Yeah.
Safety, you know.
Agreed.
Yeah, yeah.
So those are just a series of experts that we don't have here, but that's not what we picked these guys to do. What we told them was, I need as-bills, right? So we got a pair of AutoCAD documents that'll tell you what the building, we can add that to any architect, not just the one we're working with. And slowly but surely, start to make it happen. So that's good. So we needed this as a base. We have it. Got a chance to read it, but all of it, for the most part, to us, is only gonna mean some basic things. I can park a car on it. We have the capacity, and now we need to start looking at our planning and be able to say what we
The
do.
costs that are gonna make sense with what we think it's gonna be used for, but the market is gonna say, well, we actually want to put this there.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're still missing some pieces that these people weren't paid to do, but it's important to know it's there. So we have that. Let's see what else was going on. Y'all have met with the young lady that was interested in the tea room space. That's not part of this proposal, but obviously that's very similar.
But she's got some similar concerns in the sense, we had a brief conversation about, what her vision is and what is actually there and what can structurally be redesigned or added or what.
Most of hers would be non-load bearing walls. Bigger thing for us is, we need Georgia Power on a meter. We need gas light on a meter. We need, and not just for that space, but some of the others. And this is all okay. But once we have that, it's a matter of architects and the architects producing, plans. And only when we have those plans will we actually know the cost. And that's still not the cost of what it's gonna take for that restaurant owner to go into business. They gotta buy, their own equipment, they gotta buy their own table. Some of their architectural features, might be on that. But at least we'll know kind of what we can bring to the table. And then we need to know that. And not just that project, but a series of others.
And I think there was one comment that I brought up in the meeting with her, and I guess to just throw it out to all the council, understanding the plans as drawn, there was a separate entrance for the restaurant. And what we saw was currently a glass wall.
Correct.
And there's still access to the Morrow Center. So understanding what components possibly the city, what costs are gonna fall on what side based on the exits and entrances to that.
Normally what your landlord brings is we bring you utilities, let's say 200 amp panels. That's very traditional in a restaurant. Obviously a front door.
Right.
Then you would have natural gas, at least on the roof, some ventilators, plumbing, there's no restrooms in there, obviously. Those are gonna be kind of basics. Now, you don't have to just sit there and go, this is mine, this is yours. What you can reach a conclusion on is.
But that door is a structural change.
It is. But let's just say, to make it easy for everybody in the room, that, we laid out this, and we had somebody bid it out, right, privately or publicly, and they just say that number is 200,000, just throw a number out. The city can go in there, or through our development authorities, and say, our portion, what we're willing to prorate you as part of this lease, will cover $150,000 or $100,000 a place. The rest is on you. And after that, you're negotiating your lease rates, right, in terms of percentage. Until you have those numbers, you're guessing.
Right.
But you just know that the owner's still gonna have to put in restaurant equipment, tables, chairs, and other things. And it just depends on where we are with that. Fairly basic. You see that in, some of the regular things that restaurants are doing. The landlord gives you a tenant improvement allowance. It's negotiated up front, and then we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And I guess I say that now because that door.
Yep. That would be, but that would be our answer is, I would say, more than likely, a tenant improvement allowance, and then you have to show that you did the product, which is not gonna be hard. And let's face it, they're improving our building. At the end of that, as soon as they open that restaurant, we got a grease trap, you have all these other
For a
things.
period of time, that would be significant.
Fair, and then worst case scenario, they go out of business, you have an operating restaurant, you could lease it to anybody else. And right now, that's complicated to do because we can barely turn the lights on. So it's in there somewhere, and then you just have to judge that against the other projects that you have and which one takes what priority. I think that one sounds like a pretty decent one to move forward with because you have a willing player, the financials are strong. Still gonna take 9 months. Almost anybody who's doing construction, something like that, 6 months would be rosy. 9 months for total construction, unless quasi building, is probably reality and just absolute nightmare would be. But I don't anticipate. Because most of the time you have to fight the city. We're gonna hope that we're not. Any other questions related to some of that? I realize we just got it, you get a chance to read it for yourself. And I realize there's a series of questions that we asked from that. Let's see.
Do you have any, movement on the Welcome Center partnership, anything going with that?
Oh, yeah, we talk to people all the time, whether or not they actually
I said, is
get to be.
anything going?
Well, I talked with a young lady today, who's got an operating business in Fairburn, 60 years, likes the space, and has a concept that I think might be agreeable. Some minor modifications, right? In other words, what you're doing over there might not be exactly what we'd like here. Can you see the vision? And if you can, then let's see if we can walk into that space a little bit and take it to the next level. If Bob's already meeting with somebody else, so it's a series of people, and you just have to find one who agrees with you. So that you say, I want a bakery, I want something that's a coffee shop, I want something fairly nice, and you can't afford this building. That's just a fact. So somewhere in there, you're gonna have to pay a more reasonable rate that's not gonna be supported by the value of that building. It's just not. And for that trade, you get a really super building, and we want a super product. And if you could deliver that, then let's take it to the next level. And I think she's gonna at least have some thoughts, and we'll see if she comes back with it. If she doesn't, I think she'd be a good business to have in the city somewhere, but maybe it's just not there. But she has a really odd building where she's at. It's bigger than the traditional, it's like 3,500 square feet for her style, which you would say is not normal. And it's a different style, which I think leads some credibility to the fact that you're a little forward thinking, and it's maybe. Next thing to do is to, personally, go drive by and eat it and find out. But she's got to ask the next question is, can you live with the model that we just laid out for us, which is very similar to the discussions the city council's been having. We want a bakery, we want somebody to come in there. I'm not saying a sweet hut concept, but something that's a little more family friendly
Right.
design.
Community
And,
space.
yeah, and you know, you got 25 parking meters. Can you live with that? Can your business model support that? You know, so that's automatically some drop off, pick up. I get it. Don't know. But obviously we've had several that we've said no to, and health clinic, nope. So something's gonna drive value to you, I think is there, but no solid answers yet. But we know what we'd have to do if we did very similar to the space at the conference center. We'd have to have a design, certainly something that's not gonna structurally tear up that building, and then we'd have to have a cost. And from there, see if it supports, you know, what we're looking for. Absolutely. And I think there's lots of ways to do it. We also met with David Lee today, and this is dealing specifically with the night market concept. David's pretty forward thinking. Right? And, you know, I've met a number of people, and usually they have a hard time keeping track of us. I think he walked past me a little bit today, but in a good way, where you're going, okay, well, I didn't think that way. I was just like, all right, and then are you sure? How's that gonna fit? You know, do we have the freight to carry it? In other words, I don't think you do. As a city, I don't think you got those kind of resources. But that opened up another series of discussions, and it says it doesn't have to go. In fact, it shouldn't be open. And that got a lot more participation, and I think it changed things. So he's gonna do some block drawings, if you will, that kind of says here's where he sees it. And that would be dealing more in the shop area than being specific, not your existing shops. Leave those alone for just a second. There would be the green space that would have the hotel, right, which we know is at least 3 to 5 years away, right? Almost no matter what we would do, we couldn't move any faster than that. And then that green space that's right up into the curve, and let's just say behind the yellow house, is a little green space over there. That's over 400 and some feet long just on that side, and on that hotel side, if you will, and at least 100 feet across. That's a lot of room, you know. So then the question is, you know, you're talking some pretty substantial, you know, opportunities there. It's a lot of room. And that opened up some interesting discussions. And he had some ideas where, I'm just paraphrasing what's there so that when you get to see it, you get a chance to understand it. So let's say we got into some of these kitchen type structures. Let's just use a container. That's one of the answers.
So that's what I was gonna say. We've had conversations about container pop-ups.
That's correct.
And using those types of shelter structures to
Correct.
create a pop-up event.
Yeah, the word container makes me cringe just a touch.
But you've got to drive around and see what they're doing to
I
containers.
agree, and the staff has been sending them to me as
Right.
fast as I've been complaining.
Right.
And we also went and just went to almost to the internet and just basically said, okay, I like that one. How much does it cost if I just bought it? In other words, I'm buying a full kitchen, equipment and everything in there, and it was like 110.
Because even imagine.
That's not a bad thing.
Over at the dog park, we're talking about the dog,
Correct.
even having a container pop-up opportunity, you know, Freedom Fest field.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, then the one thing, again, this is where David's ahead of me a little bit, ahead of me, is he's got to know I'm looking at that going, oh, I'm not sure, I like that. So he's got the design that if somebody just showed it to you, you're not going to see the container. So he's done some facade improvements. He said the steel structure is what I was after. The minor facade improvements certainly made it look like it was a normal building.
Right.
Smaller, but a normal building. And you're going, okay. And that led to other discussions, you know, are we gonna cook out back? You're like, ooh, you know, what are you gonna do? But we'd have it.
You can create patios, I mean.
Correct. That's exactly where he was in. And of course, every time he had an idea, I'm sitting over there imagining the worst. And he's like, but this is how you handle that. This is what you did. And this is how we make it more cost effective. And you're like, I like that. I agree with that. Some of it was, why can't I just sell that to the private sector? So absolutely, saving the moment. And so that was good. And then some of it was, let's say you had a Cinco de Mayo, or we had a certain type of fair over there. Why can't I maintain a couple of them? And then that becomes yours to lease for that weekend. So we're going to do Hispanic flavor, and you got 3 containers, but there might be 6 additional ones that are owned by the private sector.
Sounds kind of like a food hall.
Sounds very much like a food hall, as a matter of fact. But it's not one building, and begin to see the vision in that, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't destroy what you already have.
Right.
And that allows regular
It's
retail.
an additional feature.
Correct, and it doesn't impact the housing that we have. And that's interesting. And without getting into a tremendous amount of details, but we met with the lady out there this weekend, and she's ready to cut a check. You know, and you're like, hold tight. You know, I think with a little more time, I could have convinced her to do ground up construction. But she had her own broker, and you know, I realize we're live here, but you know, her own broker looks out for her. That's not my job. Right? My job is to look out for you. And you know, we got an LOI from her on the White House. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, she's,
Not the big White House, but the small
deciding,
one.
but she finalized, and I'm gonna add it on once I get the
Yeah,
LOI.
and that's a building we haven't even really moved forward yet, right? In other words, wow, that was fast. If that held up, that
She
would
owns
be
a
two
restaurant,
existing
yeah.
structures, and she got resources.
Southern Peach Barbecue in Maryland, so yeah,
Oh, she's from
yeah, she has experience.
Yeah, her sisters live here, so she would take what they've done and move it down here. And it's pretty good, so, a good barbecue and some other things that make good sense to do. So, but again, one more time, marketing. an
Southern
existing
Peach
building that you have.
Barbecue and soul food. Yeah.
That leaves only. And you really are.
They started.
And for the sake of driving conversation.
Peach
I think
pie,
we
peach
have had
cobbler.
a lot of
Yeah.
conversations where we have
Sweet
been-
potato pie.
that you all have a meeting and able to kind of connect the pieces, the blank space out there. You know, it'll get,
It does, and so then it leads us into other questions, like a tax allocated district. So let's say we.
those incentives that we discussed.
That's correct. So if we become kind of a bank, right, because you can do that. You can have an issue where you buy it, let's say you don't have $500,000, which is a market value, what I put on both, by the way. But that doesn't mean we can't finance it. Development authority can't finance it. Why not do it? But if we keep the building in our name for a while, then we keep the tax number off of it, that puts money back in the bank. So let's say we have a tax allocation district. Everybody knows, let's assume you realize that 60% of the property owner is representing 60% of the value. Right now, you're 100% of the property owner is representing 100% of the value. So you do it before you change hands on anything. And that's a mandated number, whether you call it a CAM fee, a tax fee, or whatever, but it's mandated, you don't have to pay. And that helps offset our costs, right? So you look at it, so we have to maintain it, somebody's got to do it. At some point, we don't want to be the primary payer of everything.
Right.
We've got to wean it off and say, some of that's on you.
I mean, we can incubate, so to speak, but the ability for the city to hand it off and.
Agreed. And then the private sector will take care of it.
Right, correct.
So as you're heading into there, I don't want you to be blindsided. There's lots of moving parts, and you don't have solid too much of anything yet. But part of that was why we got the development authority, so they have a quorum. You know, they've got some property. The URA's got some property, and we need to be able to move some things around and enter into some agreements. We're not there yet, but we're remarkably close.
One thing, shifting a little bit, we have several signature events, and we do have engagements and relationships with organizers that kind of, you know, create the product, get the marketing together. We're doing more of that out there at the district. I think it would be good for council to kind of have a conversation, let it marinate, and come back and have a conversation about what will our partnerships look like when there are events out at the district. We've already experienced an event where some city resources were provided, but then in turn, we understand businesses are in business to make money, but if it's a city resource, you're not going, how are we gonna structure that so that the business owner still makes money?
Agreed. Well, like the car show was almost entirely private.
Well, and I'm thinking more of the
Cinco de Mayo.
and
That
the
was-
train.
Yeah, the Day of the Dead, that was a lot us. Cinco de Mayo was small us, big them.
Big them,
The car show was very small us, almost all of them.
right.
And it was possible.
And
So
just
I-
understanding what, I guess, in advance, having a conversation so that we understand what our resources, the value of our resources for the engagement with a partner, to have more events that serve the public and bring, you know, we're a destination city, we're trying to, you know, level that up. But if we provide certain things, business owner, you're not gonna be able to charge citizens for it. Or let's just understand that as a council.
And that becomes complicated in that district anyway, because that model only works when you're 100% of it. As you slowly but surely start to, you know, either lease or sell those buildings, now somebody's gonna have, you get access, that's what you get, which means you're not gonna have, gated off. Now, that doesn't mean, example like Decatur, you know, does a little square section, and they grab that and they charge. But our square is not very big, so you're not gonna be able to do a tremendous amount on that side. There was some discussion with the car show guy that he would like offset your business stuff. I think that gets complicated for us. And you go, okay. But in other words, you partner with the local businesses that are there. I think the main goal is just to, yes, and we got to move forward on several thought processes.
Because we're encountering newer territory than we ever had before. I mean, just since the world has opened up, we've had so many more events, and they've just come online so quickly. And I do appreciate, you know, City Hall staff for kind of just jumping in and, you know, pedal to the metal. But as a council, we have to understand that when we go out to these events and we see certain things, as a council, we're like, no, that's not what you brought to us. You brought something a little different. And if these are city resources, we as a council need to have some rules of the road and engagement so that we're clear. Because we want businesses and we want these promoters to make money.
Absolutely.
But understanding the cost of that and what the value of the partnership really is.
And then,
we should discuss that.
there's got to be lots of equations in terms of how many number of people you bring. Because one of the discussions for the people who are actually trying to get in there is like, you know, what about events? And I'm like, well, you know, we're going to do something. And, you know, can I do exclusions? In other words, I've got the only barbecue place. I said, well, if I've got somebody else out there that's a pop-up vendor and they're doing no, so we've got to compete with everybody else. Know that going in. That's the rules you got to write behind it. And then others were just simply, okay, I'm a private individual. I own one of those places out there. Can I schedule that? My own. You know, well, that's where you're going to need a permit. You're going to have some discussions with the city, just like you would have a parade or something.
We've got city resources out there. You're not going to be able to utilize them as a part of your organized event to make money.
And we've seen some people make some requests that just are not in our best interest at all.
Are we considering the space a city resource? So what I feel like y'all are saying is, we would not allow a car show to charge to get in.
Well,
In the future.
I'm saying,
Because I think y'all are saying two different things.
Well, and I had that discussion with them, and I actually told them that might not be something they're allowed to do. In other words, it doesn't make any sense. How else can you break up those funds?
right, so let's let it marinate. Let's season it and let it marinate so that when we come back to have a real discussion and we can tie it up, because we're going to have events moving forward. Let's understand where we're trying to take it. Because again, we want people to come to the city and make money.
Agreed.
But we want that balance of understanding the city has resources, they are of value. You can use the city resources up to this point, and the rest of it, promoter, is on you.
And depending on which event we sponsor, however we do it, there's a lot of moving parts in it. But at least from this standpoint, in a period of a relatively short period of time, the very fact that we're even having that conversation is remarkable. Okay, that's progress. And when we have to start setting up boundaries and rules to be able to function, that's great. Because before we had nothing, you know, and now you got something. And I'll trade that, you know, for not just that area, but I would say the same thing over at the university, because I know that there's going to be some discussions with some folks using it over there, same thing. And it's just, but it's good to have. And the more we have, eventually we're going to have the same discussion over there at the art district. You know, we got blue on that one as well. You know, and that's just a perfect example of something that's just stuck, right? We had some ideas, we got some other things, we got busy. You know, now we got a building, we've owned it for a long time. You know, you have to do more than one thing at one time. You know, the planner, whoever that might have been, the state architect, that's not relying on us. I mean, they could be working on that right now, giving us proposals and ideas as to how to move that thing forward. I get it. There's only so much energy that's available to them. But, you know, as these get accomplished, you won't have to, you know, create a garden a second time. You won't have to, you know, build a dark space, you won't have to do these other things. These are buildings we've had in our possession for a while. And at the same time, we're looking at, you know, mixed use in a concept, you know, what we want. I think Lon and I had a pretty good conversation, you know, in terms of what happened in terms of the tour of Woodstock and some others. And all that works. But that's progress, and that, you know, you want all the conversations you have. And I'm sure we'll make some mistakes, right? We're gonna eventually get somebody that we probably prefer not to have been out there. But
So far, so good.
so far, so good. And other questions as it goes through, it appears that somebody over there in King James or whatever that is building a fairly substantial house. Isn't that right, Ms. Reddick? To be odd, as a matter of fact, what you said.
Yeah, it will be, which one of these is not like the other? It's like
To-
300% increase in value.
Yeah, so when you go, why does a person build a potentially $300,000 house in a subdivision that carries less than that?
And y'all know this is the neighborhood behind the district,
Yeah.
on the county side.
So do you really think someplace like
But you
that?
said King James.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, when I saw it, I was like, what? Like,
So
What?
are we having an impact and other people might be buying into that vision even faster than we are?
I think we are not independent of the impact. We are certainly part of the collaborative impact.
And that is
And
not a bad answer.
The reality of where that housing market is and even the rental market. I mean, it's a seller's market, people are being outpriced in apartments. In that particular area, the accessibility in the metro area to any interstate is always premium. So,
But it suffered some serious valleys.
But the irony on this one would be even if that happened on, say, Hammock Drive, nice subdivision, right? Somebody goes out there and knocks out that kind of venture, I'd be going, wow, that was big. But if you do that in that subdivision,
it's a little different.
that's almost phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
So I don't believe that happens in the dark. I think something is happening there, somebody's believing it, and I think we're having an impact on that, I do. And that's great, you know what we're trying to do in the first place. So all that's good. I realize we're at 9:30, any questions for the cause? Ms. Renee,
No question.
Ms. Thornton?
I did, one question, was it dumpster days or something? What was that?
Dumpsters.
Hmm?
Oh, dumpster days, that's a different
It's-
answer.
It's so much more appealing.
Dumpster day? What's?
Dog days.
No, I think she's just talking
Dumpster.
about dumpsters in the neighborhood. Isn't
Oh,
that what you're
yeah.
asking?
Yeah,
Okay.
what's dumpster days?
So it would theoretically be where we schedule dumpsters in neighborhood, maybe not individual neighborhoods, but collection bins.
For
so that-
bulk?
Yeah.
To
So
throw
Collection.
away stuff so that our team.
you don't have to
doesn't
put it
as
out
much
2
stuff.
items at a time, which nobody does anyway.
So,
Well, what you do on a dumpster is you make it available. Let's say you're in your subdivision, everybody throws their junk away, kind of in the dumpster. Then there's gonna be that much less for public works to have to pick up.
To
because
pick
you
up
already
one by
made it.
one, they're just removing the dumpster.
yeah, but what's gonna prevent me from going over there throwing hazardous material over in there?
Oh, no, somebody's gotta monitor it. Somebody's gotta be there. You're gonna show me your driver's license, and then I'm gonna say dump away.
So this is gonna be one dumpster at a time, going from neighborhood to neighborhood, not just randomly parked?
It'll be a schedule, so maybe
Yeah,
on
it'll be a
Stratford Arms
schedule.
Court.
Okay.
It's a relatively small group over
Okay.
there. You're gonna get it, that guy's gonna drop it in the morning, they're gonna
Okay.
pick it up in the
Okay.
afternoon, so nobody's gonna do anything crazy.
Okay.
When we did it in the past, we've done this before. We also engaged some folks to help you if you needed to throw some things away. So you didn't have to lift the couch 10 feet up in the air, maybe.
You gotta lift your own couch.
Who?
We're gonna ask you to
Well,
help everybody.
You know, when I was 25, it didn't matter, but right about now, I might need help on my couch. So we'll see.
No dumpster, and no dog parks.
Girl, they'll be talking about that dog park. Lots of people go to that dog park.
I do not do dog parks, I do not do dumpsters.
That's why I put it right by your garden.
Hey,
Yeah, that'll be fun. Other questions? Welcome. Ms. Trainer?
No question?
Perfect. All right, meeting adjourned?
no. You son.